Welcome back to The Sales Revolution. I'm Ingrid Maynard, founder and managing director of The Sales Doctor. I'm joined again, and I say again because I've been lucky enough to have David Marshall a couple of times now on the podcast. But for those of you who may not have caught the first episode, I just wanted to introduce David, particularly with reference to his current company, SalesGrid. David has a 25-year track record of innovation in the area of B2B sales and sales technology. He's based in Melbourne and has successfully launched multiple software companies, including Performio, a global leader in sales commissions management. David's latest venture is SalesGrid, an artificial intelligence-powered sales productivity tool that helps salespeople to be awesome on large, complex deals. David's company is leading the way with research and development in the application of AI for sales teams. He can help dispel the myths and the hype around AI and focus us on the immediate and longer-term gains to be won by sales leaders in this evolving space. Welcome back, David.
Good to see you again, Ingrid. Thank you for having me again. I don't know why you keep inviting me back, but anyway, here I am.
Yeah, there must be something in it, Dave.
Sorry.
There must be something in it. And I know that you have been on here before, as I said, but for those who didn't listen to episode 36, can you please tell us what SalesGrid is? I know I've kind of given the high-level version in the intro, but in your words, maybe talk to us about why you went in this direction with this iteration of your entrepreneurial track record.
Yeah, I mean, when I was running, you mentioned my previous venture with Performio. So I was directly involved in selling medium to large scale deals, 3, 6, 12 month, some of them took 2-3 year deals to close. And we had a small sales team, and I've been working with salespeople all my career. And I guess one of the things that have really troubled me, I guess a key pain point has always been actually how do you actually codify what a winning sales process actually looks like and really document that clearly so that you can actually explain it to your colleagues and your salespeople. And of course, it's not always just your salespeople; it involves your whole team, right? Sales is often can be a whole company effort on these bigger deals. So, how do you codify that? And then how do you actually then, consistently execute on that process? And when I say how do you do it, I'm actually talking about myself as well. Like we're all guilty of, taking shortcuts and not staying, and having to reinvent the wheel. So that was the key, one of the key things that was always on my mind as building a business and being involved in sales. And so, SalesGrid was all about really addressing that. So we started off by building this platform that firstly enabled you to actually properly document your sales process from woe to go. Yep. And then the holy grail is then, okay, well, now you've done that, how do you actually put that in the hands of salespeople in a way that's contextual, useful, in the moment, at the right time? Because, as we all know, and again, I'm not having a crack at salespeople because I'm a salesperson myself, we don't like having to use so many tech tools. We just want to be talking to people, right? So how do you actually put it there in the moment where people are actually working so that they are going to actually follow that winning process and not just take shortcuts or whatever? So that's essentially what that was. That's the vision. And so what we've built with SalesGrid is it's an online software that can plug into your Salesforce or where you're working, so to actually help you equip salespeople with what they need to maximize every step in the process.
Yeah, I absolutely love it, and we'll be having a conversation about that because I just so believe in it. And the fact that you are a salesperson and you say that about yourself says everything about the philosophy that underpins everything that you do, which is why we're talking again. I really wanted to dive into a report that you released in January, which was the future of sales execution. I thought it was very exciting because it clearly laid out how Savvy's AI, and Savvy, by the way, is the AI that underpins SalesGrid, how that can help organisations to grow revenue and profit more efficiently. And what I'm hoping to do today with you in this conversation is to unpack a little bit of that here, if that's okay.
Yep, great.
Yeah, great.
Let's do it.
So one of the things that I wanted to start with was talking us through that you outlined 12 sales jobs that you'd identified as, you know, the most likely mid-funnel sales motions that can be supported by AI today. Can you just unpack that a little bit? So what they are, and then why you chose those particular jobs to kind of focus how Savvy can support salespeople in doing those jobs more efficiently.
Yeah, and maybe, I don't know if, we've got a nice little exhibit on this that might be useful to attach with the podcast. But,
yes.
Yeah, we are, yeah, and I'm glad you pointed out, you used the term mid-funnel. You clearly read the report, Ingrid. Good stuff, because, we deliberately excluded top of the funnel, lead generation. Now, and look, if you talk to your average typical salesperson, they'll say that filling the funnel, lead gen is a super important job to be done, more than ever. But we're not, as important that it is, we're not tackling that. We're talking about, okay, you've actually now got that that warm lead, that qualified lead. How do you then take it through the process to to negotiate and close the deal? So those 12 jobs. Yeah, there's different ways you can slice and dice this. Different organisations and people might use different terminology or classify things differently. But we've been working in the AI space for over 2 years now. We identified these 12 jobs as the most likely where AI can actually make a real difference. So the first one was really, if you think about it almost sequentially in a way, researching the company, that's an absolutely crucial one. For example, using ChatGPT to, get a quick heads up on a company that you're meeting with that you don't know a lot about. It can be brilliant at actually giving you a really in-depth rundown so that you're better prepared for that meeting. So researching the company, researching the people in the company. So that's an obvious job to be done. Another sales job to be done, salespeople need to do, which I think we can always do better at, and that's actually preparing for the meeting. Now, there's a bit of overlap with these jobs. Obviously, researching the company, you would say, that's part of your prep. But I'm talking about actually really carefully mapping out your plan for the meeting. What are the outcomes you're trying to achieve? What do you expect to happen in the meeting? What materials you need to bring to the meeting, et cetera, et cetera. So that's a second job to be done where AI can be really helpful, particularly if you think about it as you go through a long deal cycle, you're having many meetings and you want to be super pro, awesome at it. You want to make an awesome impression at every meeting. The way to do that is to be super prepared. And of course, sometimes we can cut corners, don't we? So, sorry.
Yep. Yep. Spot on.
I know. I don't want to go. Do you want me to go through all 12?
I do. I actually do. You don't need to go into detail, but just I know that we will attach, obviously, this report to the show notes.
Yeah.
And if there's any other visuals that you wanted to provide, I'm more than happy to do that. But just in case people, are just sort of scanning through this podcast and won't necessarily go to that level, just because some of these jobs, people go, oh, yes. I might have conflated a couple of those jobs into one, but actually sort of breaking them down like this, to me anyway, as somebody who loves a good sales process and knows that there are certain things that are common to all sales processes, this really spoke to me. So I am keen to go through them if that's okay.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I'll just go through them just read them out, and
Yeah,
then
okay.
and then we can dive in if you want. Because
Yeah.
as you can tell, once I get going, it's hard to stop on the
It's
detail.
okay. Yeah.
Because it's exciting what you can do in some of these areas. So so taking on the top, researching the company, being able to prepare professionally for every meeting, not just the first, but preparing for meetings throughout the process. Gathering requirements is another key area where AI can help. So again, it's not just the discovery meeting, gathering requirements at every step in the process leading up to a solution. Another job to be done is drafting emails. So as a salesperson, a job I've got to do is communicate in the written form with my customer. Email is the most common. It's managing email threads is super important. Another one is tailoring content. So by that, I mean specifically this idea that you don't just send a brochure. Customers these days, to differentiate, they want content that's hyper relevant to their specific situation, to their needs. So tailoring content is really important, and AI can help with that. Multi-threading is another one. Actually, how do you connect with, bring different stakeholders in, and how you're communicating with different stakeholders and communicating in a personalised way with those stakeholders throughout the deal. A fifth one, another obvious one, is drafting proposals. So you might get a request for a proposal with 400 questions. AI can be really helpful with that, but even just drafting more, a 10-page proposal document. Another one, a really important one, you might put this up the top almost, qualifying the deal, using AI to help you really understand objectively. AI is good at taking off the happy ears, right, and going, okay, let's qualify where this deal's at. Another one is, I only got 4 to go, deal tactics.
Yes.
So going, okay, we're at this point in the deal. What options do we have? What are the next best moves? And actually getting a bit more creative, not just defaulting to the typical tactics. Questions and objection handling, and again, so you might use drafting emails, a job to be done. You might have to answer questions and handle objections either in a meeting or on an email. But I'm specifically talking about here, there's a whole universe of questions and objections you might have to handle in the process. AI can be trained up on on all the questions and how to best handle those objections. And then the final two are preparing. We actually set preparing for pitches, sales pitches and demos. That's obviously preparing for a meeting, but we called this out as a separate job because there's a very specific sort of skill set and way of thinking that you need to prepare for those, that high stakes moment in the process.
Yes.
And then finally, 12th job to be done is negotiate and close. And this is one of those jobs where it's hardly been used for AI. AI's hardly been used at all at the moment. But to me, it's a kind of an obvious one around, just getting negotiation 101 type things done properly and consistently by the salesperson, so they're properly prepared for the negotiation is another job where AI can assist. So that's the 12. I've tried to keep that as succinct as possible.
The reason I love those 12 broken down is because they actually are discrete focuses and actions for salespeople that, number one, they're good reminders for the listeners to just go back and think about their own sales processes at the moment. And when you think about the need at the moment for salespeople to be more active than ever and to be, out into the market, grabbing opportunity, bringing it back. And then you've got all of this work that goes alongside, maximising share of wallet, which is underpinned by effective execution of a lot of these sales jobs. The role of AI can expedite their productivity. I don't even know whether you've got a measure of that, and I'm sure you will in time, the more users you have using SalesGrid. But that to me is it's just such an enabler today. There's so much for salespeople to be doing. And when we consider the fact that the thing that salespeople are terrible at usually is the admin side of it, is the planning side of it, is all of that, that writing, recording, info-based, data-driven stuff. They're good at using data sometimes, but if we can just say, look, you're not good at that. You're good at the face-to-face. Let's do all of the stuff, or as much of the stuff as we possibly can, that enables you to be better at that in-person conversation, presentation, negotiation, whatever those face-to-face, high-level, high-impact actions is. I just think that it's such an enablement tool.
Yeah, totally. That's certainly we talk about enablement, we talk about augmentation, this idea that you are augmenting the salesperson with this extra bandwidth, extra capability. So we're not talking about replacing the salesperson. We're talking, it's such a huge opportunity. It's like I was talking with one of my investors the other day. He made the point about a way to think about this. If you look at any sales organization, but you've got the founder or the lead, the sales leader. Maybe they were a top salesperson originally, and they know what great looks like, right? So imagine that person could go shotgun on every meeting at every moment with their whole sales team in real time, right? Imagine you've always got that person by their side just to coach and assist.
That's it.
And that's a big vision, right? I'm not saying we're at that point yet, and there's a way to go, but that's what we should be aiming for. That you've got this sidekick that is just always there to help you do better research, to help you prepare just that bit better, to help you gather requirements, and so on and so on.
That's it, and that's. It's interesting. I interviewed someone a couple of weeks ago who has been in the sales coaching, sales training space for a really long time. And he was talking about, cutting salespeople some slack and maybe getting a sales admin person in to do that. Now, while I agree with the premise, a lot of companies will go, well, we're not getting headcount, to do that, to pick up the slack of what a salesperson, we've employed them to do. But this is where AI, I think, comes in and takes a lot of that stuff over because, all of that planning, research, information, preparation, coaching, like you said, what are some of the questions I could be asking this person? How do I tailor my questions? You talk about multi-threading. How can I do that better? So that they're really expanding their insight across a business by having some thoughtful questions prepared. Now, that doesn't mean that they go, oh, right, I'll just do what Savvy tells me to do. Hopefully, they're also empowering themselves to look at it. The heavy lifting has been done, and then they can nuance it based on their own personal insight about these people and this company as well.
Yeah, that is absolutely spot on. Like, it's ideally this sidekick, we call it Savvy, is saying, hey, deal tactics. Okay, we haven't heard back from the customer for a couple of weeks. Give me 5 unique ways that I could reach out to try and reactivate or get a response, right? So rather than just send an email saying, oh, hi Ingrid, we haven't heard from you for a while. What's going on? What other things? And so you might get 5 tactics, and Savvy, 2 of them might be rubbish or not relevant, but maybe 2 or 3 go, oh yeah, that's actually interesting, and it actually prompts you to think, okay, I'm not just going to send a follow-up email. I'm actually going to grab that news article that's relevant to their industry. I'm going to grab that new product development release we just did and say, hey Ingrid, this. You might want to know, you know what I mean? Like, so
I do.
It's giving you options, and again, it can draft a really nice email, or it can capture a really nice set of requirements. But you still got to review it and put your own lens, and then not just check for accuracy, but check for the nuance of the deal. So the human is still 100% at the centre of what's going on here.
Yeah, but when we think about the pace in which we're all sort of, it just feels this year, especially, that the pace has picked up significantly. And we think about, they talked about the internet and our exposure to information. And I think, one of those quotes was probably done about 20, 30 years ago, but the people now in a day or in a week or whatever the statistic was, now is exposed to more information than somebody 100 years ago was exposed to in their lifetime.
Yeah.
And I it just kind of explodes my brain to think about what that must be today, let alone what it's going to be in a year's time, 5 years' time, 10 years' time. So if we kind of play that out and then we look at it through the lens of a salesperson, that rapid pace, simply cannot be done unless you've got some enablement with you. And this is where I'm just so excited by this tool, because that I love salespeople and I want them to be the best that they can be. And anything that's going to help them to be even better at what they do, I'm all for. And this is where I really see, SalesGrid being front and centre.
Yeah, that's certainly what we're aiming for. And it's all about, like I said, it's about equipping the salespeople with what they need to maximise every shot. Yeah, and that's a key point. It's about, they're still making the play. It's not like they're lazy or
no.
Helping them maximise that moment, every moment. There are so many moments in a long sales cycle. So
yeah, that's right. That's exactly right. Yeah. So if I go back to the report again, you mentioned in it the difference as well between salespeople ranking some of those 12 jobs as high importance to them, where, and there's kind of a tension between the high importance from a salesperson's perspective and the high impact from a revenue perspective. And the tension is really around focus, activity, and the perception that while they might be busy, we're not necessarily seeing those immediate returns from that busyness. And this is what we were just sort of discussing before. Of the salespeople you researched for this report, what were some of those jobs and what made them place high importance on those jobs?
Yeah, it was over 100 sales leaders that responded. And look, it's a survey, right? So it's giving you a bit of a snapshot of where people are at. But, one of the interesting things was customer research. That was ranked number one as the most important job in the sales process. We then, later in the survey, we said, okay, of these 12 jobs, if you could actually dial the needle, if you could improve performance on any of these, which job would actually have the biggest impact on revenue, on win rates? So interestingly, it was clear customer research was ranked last, right? And so we're going, what does that mean?
Yeah.
And so I think this is actually not related so much to AI. This is just related to the idea. There's a few things going on here. One is that there's a disconnect. There's a time delay between, you do research up at the top of the start of the process and the win doesn't come till, so there's a time delay. So maybe that's it. But I think there's potentially, there's potentially, what did I call it? It's sort of like there's this illusion that we're already doing that. And again, this has got nothing to do with AI. This is a broader discussion here about sales management, that, we tend to think either we or our salespeople, they're already doing that pretty well. So we're not going to get that bigger uplift. But are they? So I would challenge sales leaders, salespeople and be honest, are we really doing the research we could? And this is the thing, remember, your point about information and now the availability of Gen AI and everything, that the stakes are just going up and up. The expectations are so you are going to have to, if you were doing research at a level before, you're going to have to up your game.
Yeah.
And this brings up another discussion about competitive advantage. Obviously we're building SalesGrid to provide a competitive advantage. How sustainable? Is it just going to become table stakes, or, what's going to be how do you actually maintain the win rate? Anyway, I digress a little bit, but there is definitely this illusion of we're already doing that here. When I talk to sales leaders and I say, one question we didn't ask was, which I like to ask, is do you have a well-documented sales process? Now, over the years, I've asked that question probably 1,000 times. The majority of sales leaders will say, yeah, we've got a documented process. the majority of times that I've gone into an organisation and we pull back the curtain, there's the Wizard of Oz is there. No, there's not. No, you don't have a sales process. You've got a bunch of stages in your pipeline, and maybe there was a slide deck you delivered at the kickoff, but there's no. Maybe you spent $300,000 trying to get Challenger sale embedded in your But
don't get me started.
So that's another one there. So so let's stay on point here on the But yeah, so that was really interesting customer research. Another one, I guess the key one for me that stood out was, gathering requirements was regarded as important. It was probably around 5 or 6, or sort of in the mid-pack of importance. But it was clearly number one for revenue impact if it could be done better, which I thought was interesting. And then conversely, in terms of AI adoption, it was one of the lowest for experimentation and low for adoption. By adoption, I mean it's actually been operationalized within the sales team.
Yeah.
Most, just generally speaking, probably half the companies surveyed were not even experimenting in these areas, which I was surprised by, to be honest, because anyone can get a ChatGPT account or a Claude account or whatever, but to start testing these things out. But yeah, so gathering requirements was very low, and and part of that it might be just there's a lack of awareness of how do I do that? Everyone understands AI immediately at a surface level, what it kind of means, and some of the stuff we're talking about today. But I think people then struggle to go down the level to, okay, for this job to be done, what does that look like? How do we actually get our salespeople to do better discovery, better requirements gathering with the help of AI? So I guess, they're probably a couple of the key big things that stood out for me in that report that we did.
Yeah, I was surprised as well, when I read that statistic, because one of the things that you said was, 61% of sales leaders believe that it can improve, and yet a lot of them were still really reluctant. There were some obstacles, that they saw as, getting in the way of that happening. Let's just say, a company is listening here and goes, what, we have to, if we're going to remain competitive, understanding that AI is not going to do all of the heavy lifting for us, but frankly, it's going to come down, in my opinion, to two things that are going to give you a competitive advantage: better AI tools, and more tailored. The more tailored a sales AI tool can be to the nuances of your own process and the customers that you're going to be speaking with, is going to give you a competitive advantage. But then it's about, maybe three things. Second one is probably knowing what the connector between how to use that AI and the information that's generated from that AI and what that means for me as a salesperson to then know how to use that. And the third part, I think, is the skill of the salesperson still to be able to still, conduct themselves in a highly competitive way. And I think that without the three, though, if you've just got really highly qualified salespeople and they're great, you're putting them at a disadvantage and probably not realising their full potential unless you also support them with a high-functioning AI. Am I misguided there, Dave? Or
no, look, obviously, where I'm coming from, I would say absolutely not. I'd probably reverse the order, maybe. I mean, I'd say still that the humans, the salesperson's at the centre here, right? So their skill, their expertise, their diligence, and all that, and all the stuff that you talk about is absolutely number one. And then, but then, like you say, if you're not augmenting them with this AI capability that, like you say, is tailored to the organisation's winning sales process. Yeah, that's got the ability to help them be better at connecting customer requirements, the customer's buying journey with your sales process. Yeah, they're going to be at a disadvantage. Now, at the moment, frankly, if we look at what's happening out there, and you can get away with it at the moment, right? But it's as you say, the pace is picking up. It's just a matter of when, not if. It's going to happen that there will soon be a gap that's going to grow between companies that buy and those that don't. That's for sure.
Yep. No question about that. So if I'm a company and I'm listening to this podcast and I'm thinking, right, well, we need to get ourselves in order. We need to start to investigate AI. Hopefully it's SalesGrid. And this is not a sales promo by any stretch, but I am absolutely in love with the technology. Let's just say I'm a sales leader or I'm the owner of a business. What are some of the things that I need to have in place so that I've got a really clear pathway so that I'm ready to adopt AI? Because I can't just go out and get it and think it's going to solve all my problems.
No, that's right. There needs to be obviously a degree of sales tech, maturity. Like with anything, right? With AI, if it's the old thing of rubbish in, rubbish out. So if you don't have a way of capturing, if you don't have a decent sales system in place, you're going to struggle. By that I mean, you've got to have a CRM. You need to have a place where you store your documents that's hopefully connected into your CRM. You need those basics in place. An information architecture that's going to then support the AI. So that's one thing. But then the other thing, I think, and one of the reasons why we did this jobs to be done thing was because we wanted to really try and identify, okay, what are the highest value areas, and then help companies actually think in a more structured and purposeful way about how they go on this journey. So one of the things we're saying is, this vision of the augmented virtual salesperson, the salesperson augmented by a virtual teammate, whether that's 12 months or 5 years down the track, it's a journey you've got to take to get there. And so what we're suggesting to companies is that they should go on a game plan, which involves, pick out of those 12 jobs to be done. For your business, what are going to give you the highest impact? Don't pick all 12, pick maybe 2 or 3.
Okay.
Start with them. Do some purposeful experiments around that with a small group of your team. Prove out the value, measure the value, then operationalize that into your business, and then go from there. So that that's have a scorecard that says, okay, well, at the moment, this is what customer research looks like for our. Let's get an honest picture of how well we're doing customer research. And now at the end of the prototype or proof of concept, how much better are we doing it? And then that gives you a business case for then operationalizing it across your whole sales business. That's effectively what we're proposing.
Yeah, that's great. I think that's really good advice, David, because every business is different, and that's why, look, I'm not poo-pooing any company that has created a sales process for companies to shoehorn into their own businesses. But the truth is that each business actually has a process, whether or not it's documented, they have one. And that doesn't mean that it's the best one. It just means that they have one, and then once that is documented, and then they analyse that a little bit more, and they look at the stages, they understand where the high impact gains can be, and then they have all of the other things that are in place. They've got a CRM in place. They've got other information that links to the CRM so that it makes it easier for an AI tool like Savvy to be able to come in and utilise what's actually there to enable those salespeople. Then it's going to, be a considerable time saver for them and a productivity enhancer. David, I really believe that every business needs to support their salespeople to do more. After all, sales is the lifeblood of every business. We'll ensure a link to this report is in the show notes, so make no mistake about that. How else can people get in touch with you if they want to find out, what SalesGrid could look like for their business, how can they reach you?
They can just find me on LinkedIn. I'm trying to be a good LinkedIn citizen and post every week or two. Sometimes I don't. David Marshall on LinkedIn. You can tell by my hair there, you'll find me on there. But the second one is you just email me at david@salesgrid.us. We are, just for your ref, I was going to say just quietly, but this is on a podcast, right? But we are actually launching the whole shebang as a new brand in about August, so this will be redundant. This podcast, so might have to update this when we've relaunched. But yeah, at the moment, david@salesgrid.us.
Amazing, absolutely outstanding, and I'm looking forward now to the next report that you do, because that one was just so rich.
Thanks, Ingrid. Yeah, I'm glad you got a lot out of it, and that was our first big report that we've done on this journey. We intend to do it every year, so we're going to see if we can build it up every year and actually track this whole journey towards this ultimate virtual teammate. Let's see. Let's do it again in 2030 and actually see how far we got.
Amazing. Well, it's not that far away, David. So thanks again for being my guest here on the Sales Revolution.
Thanks for having me, Ingrid. It's a pleasure, as always. Good to see you. Cheers.
Okay, you've been listening to The Sales Revolution. I'm Ingrid Maynard. And to find out how the Sales Doctor can help your organisation to transform its revenue, growth and profit, please email me at ingrid@thesalesdoctor.com.au. Visit us on our website at www.thesalesdoctor.com.au. I look forward to your company next episode. Bye for now.